Welcome back to Power and Politics. It's E-1. E-1, and Canadians will begin to head to the polls tomorrow morning. It's been 37 days of speeches, of rallies, of ads, of photo ops, and of course all sorts of controversies. But which leader has done the best job of getting their message across, and why haven't some messages resonate? Well, let's bring in our message tracker on this final day. Joining us now from Ottawa, Bruce Anderson, Senior Vice President of National Public Relations, Senior Associate with Harris Decima, and it has been a wild campaign, Bruce. We've been on board riding this bucking bronco for a while, but let's dig into the messages. Let's start with Stephen Harper. His campaign began with this: it's us or the Liberal-led coalition. Listen to this.
Just hold us to another minority, and they will move with lightning speed to recreate and impose their reckless coalition on Canadians.
We had Jim Flaherty on the show tonight, Bruce. He stuck to that. If you look at this election campaign now, they're doggedly on this stuff. What do you make of it?
Well, it may turn out that message, it may turn out that the Conservative campaign is successful, at least to the standards that they set for themselves, but I'm not sure it will be because of that message. There's a few things that I think have really failed with respect to that message. The first has to do with tone. I think from the beginning of the campaign, right through the version of that message that the Prime Minister has given today, there's a kind of a downer tone to it. He looks frustrated. He looks like he's really saying, don't go getting your hopes up. There's really nothing better out there. You don't really have anything to kind of wish for in this election campaign. I don't think that works for people, especially if they're given an alternative that does make them feel that there's a choice that they can be making. And so in effect, Mr. Harper, with his "No, you can't" message, almost created a bigger platform for Jack Layton's "Yes, you can" message. So I think that's one really, really important problem with the Prime Minister's message. And I guess the second thing I would say, the only other thing I would say probably, is that it's always good for incumbents to try to run against themselves a little bit. Unless you're convinced that everybody is absolutely happy with the way things are going, it's best to challenge people to think that you can do even better than they might have thought you'd already been doing. And I don't think there's been that much of that in the Conservative message.
You don't think that whole notion about we have to finish the recovery, it was still, you're saying, a downer, and when you contrast that to the NDP message that no one thought was going to connect at the beginning. Remember, it was just going to be, the red door and the blue door, and now we've got clearly an orange door. Let's decode why Jack Layton's message today, and perhaps why you think it's working or not.
My friends, there's so much that we can change together, but we've got a lot of work to do. The change starts with a vote.
Change, change, change. It sounds eerily reminiscent of Mr. Obama's stuff down there. He's now talking about change so much that he's today talked about defeating Stephen Harper. How effective does that speech, how is that effective?
Well, it's effective, and I've written a number of pieces about the whole idea that as human beings, we react really positively to smiling, confident, optimistic messages, and less well to messages that come from a place of anger or fear or mistrust or a sense of foreboding. And some of the people who write back to me say, well, it shouldn't be like that. And the fact is, maybe it shouldn't, but it is. That we're human beings and we react to those kind of non-verbal cues. And I think Jack Layton has been very effective at giving people a sense of hope, of promise, of optimism, of happiness. And I think the contrast with the way that he's been delivering his message and that of the Prime Minister has been one of the things that's been most remarkable in this campaign and most effective for the New Democrats.
I want to get to the Liberals, but just real quick, is that the right closing message for Jack Layton? He's now in unprecedented territory according to the polls. Would you, if you were in that war room, is that the closing message?
Not quite. I think probably what I think he needs to do a little bit more of is to reassure people that if they cast their ballot for him, that the sky won't fall. He doesn't need to do it in a very defensive way. He just needs to get a little bit more of that message out there, I think, to make people get to that ballot booth on Monday and do what it is, what it looks like many of them want to do.
Of course, the opposition fiercely saying that the sky will fall if they get in big numbers. The Liberals had a rallying cry of their own during this campaign. It's now become well known. Let's take a peek.
Rise up. Rise up. Rise up, Canada. Rise up. Rise up. Why do we have to put up with this? Rise up. Rise up.
How is that speech? It cuts both ways. Some Liberals love it, others don't. The polls are showing it's not necessarily connecting. What do you think of the whole rise up message? Did it work? Is it working or not working?
It didn't work, and I think that probably what happened with Mr. Ignatieff's message is he never really had one that he stuck with for any length of time. He started this campaign basically saying, you need to be worried about what's happening to your democracy, and I'm the guy who can change that for the better. He then dipped briefly into the world of, we've got some really good ideas in our platform, and you should pay attention to them, but then he kind of lost that idea. He then moved to this rise up message, which is really a kind of a version of saying, you're not listening to me. Why aren't you listening to me? And I'm not sure that that really connects with people. Certainly, when they listened to him say rise up, he still didn't finish it off with a sense of rise up and let me help you pay for your kids' education, or let me make sure that there's more money in your pension when you're older and ready to retire. So I don't think he focused on the issues that matter to people, at least not when people compared that to what they heard from Jack Layton. And most recently, in the last few days, Mr. Ignatieff's really been giving out a message that sounds a little bit like, it's not over yet, I haven't lost yet. I think too many messages, too many of them sounded like, why am I not getting through?
Yeah, even today he talked about saying he will stay on after this election, which is admitting that, why is he talking about that, some have wondered, when he should be talking about still trying to win, but we'll talk about that. In the last 30 seconds I've got with you, Bruce, real quick, Harris Decimal's got some new numbers out, still showing similar trends that we've seen. As you look into tomorrow, anything in particular you can tell our viewers that you, as someone who's watched a lot of these things unfold before, what are you looking for tomorrow?
Well, I think the thing I'm looking for most of all is what happens in Ontario, and particularly what happens with the turnout rates. I think everybody has a conventional wisdom that the Conservatives are better organized to get their vote out. I think that's true. I'm not sure that the Prime Minister's campaign message has been as motivating or as inspiring as it could have been, and so I'm not sure if they're going to get all the turnout that they could get, or that they could have got if they'd pursued a different message in this campaign. On the other hand, will young people, will suburban and urban women turn out in the numbers that they're signaling that they might turn out to support the NDP? Conventional wisdom again is maybe they won't, but this may be a little bit of a different election campaign, so it'll be fascinating to watch that from my standpoint.
Bruce, as we say in this election, conventional wisdom. Forget about it. There is no more conventional wisdom. Bruce Anderson, National Public Relations, and Harris Decima, and our message tracker. Been a fun campaign. Let's stay in touch tomorrow as we try to dig into what happens. Thanks,
you bet.
Bruce.
Thanks, Evan.